A Dollop of Toothpaste, a novel by Billy Vera. Chapter 37. The two friends entered Lamonda's, an old-school Italian restaurant on Tarrytown Road that had been there since 1947. The walls were made of the knotty pine that had been popular that year. They were badly discolored, hearkening back to a time when smoking was allowed in restaurants. There was still a large, yellowing black and white photograph of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig on the wall behind the bar that Pete remembered from his youth and always made him feel nostalgic. Several of the men at the small bar looked as though they'd been sitting there on the same stools since the place opened. Gnarled, grizzled old working men whose lineage from the tiny mountain towns of Calabria or Abruzzo were etched upon their craggy faces. Men who'd worked with their hands, whose aching backs and knees told of many long hours laying brick or fitting stone or repairing and replacing railroad ties in the cold of winters or the stifling heat of too many summers. One of those faces was that of old Nino Petrucci, who Pete recalled as the groundskeeper at Metropolis Country Club up Dobbs Ferry Road. He remembered Petrucci, who had seemed old even then, when Pete was a teenager carrying 2 bags of golf clubs, one slung over each shoulder. Nino drove around the golf course on his lawnmower, the hot sun baking the olive skin on his arms and face to a reddish brown under the wide-brimmed straw hat that he always wore on his head. The whole of his life consisted of the club, from dawn till dusk, returning to his wife and 5 children each evening after stopping off at Lamonda's for a single cold glass of beer after work. Home, family, and hard outdoor work were his entire world, except for Sundays, when his wife prayed for his soul at the Church of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, while he played bocce ball with other men like himself. Even after decades as an American citizen, his English was still rudimentary at best, barely enough to convey his comprehension of what his employers expected of him, and little more. At home he spoke in the dialect of the Abruzzese, as had generations of his ancestors in the mountainous western part of that province known as L'Aquila. Many American celebrities could trace their ancestry to Abruzzo, including the musicians Dean Martin, Perry Como, Henry Mancini, Michael Bublé, boxer Rocky Marciano, and even the entertainer Madonna. But these were names unknown to Petrucci. Popular culture held no meaning for men like him. What mattered was the growing cycles, how much to trim the grass on the greens, when and how much or how little to irrigate in order to maintain a firm surface and to promote deep rooting. The right time of year to replace the metal cups in the holes which caught the little white dimpled balls of liquid covered with urethane. Of these things, Nino Petrucci was a master, a savant, despite the fact that he was unable to read or write a word of either English or his native tongue. He nodded, unsmiling, to Pete as he and Johnny passed by on their way to a wooden booth by the long window beneath a sign that read, Pizzeria, Lounge, Lamonda's Restaurant and Bar, in blue and red neon.